All right, everybody, we are live with the Combatcast, coming off the heels of UFC 314, which was an awesome pay-per-view. It's the man called Dave. It's Chevy. Anyone tuning in, guys, please don't forget to subscribe. A lot of you guys, you check us out and you don't end up subscribing. We'd appreciate it. A sub means a lot to us. And those of you watching today, before we get into today, why don't we talk about what's coming up, Chevy?
All right, April 26th, new main event, UFC Fight Night, Machado Gary versus Pratis. That's 9 p.m. Eastern Kansas City card.
Good main event.
And then May 3rd, UFC Fight Night, Sandhagen versus Figueiredo, 10 p.m. Eastern from Iowa. And then May 10th, UFC 315, Muhammad versus Della Maddalena for the welterweight belt, 10 p.m. Eastern, Montreal.
Yeah, should be a great fight in terms of high-level MMA. Bilal probably is one of the least respected champs of all time.
Oh, for sure the least respected champ of all time.
Yeah, but there's no doubt he's also possibly one of the greatest welterweights of all time. But this is a great test out of the gate, so looking forward to that. But we're going to talk UFC 314 today. Before we do, what's going on around the ring? Chevy, there's a PFL card this weekend.
Yep, the World Tournament for 2025. The first round is continuing this week, Friday, April 18th. Check that out on ESPN Plus.
Yes, and also GFL just announced, unfortunately, canceling the first two events they had, unable to get funding. Not a good sign, not all that surprising, when you just look at the amount of money that they must have been potentially have to pull to have the names that they have.
Yeah.
I didn't have high hopes for this company long term anyway, as it was, but I was excited and hopeful we would get a few events out of them. And maybe we will still, but it's one of those things where it's like, man, it'd be great for the MMA landscape to have something like this.
Yeah, I mean, the UFC, obviously we've talked about it before, verging on a monopoly at this point.
Oh, yeah.
PFL putting up a fight, but it's a losing battle at this point. So GFL, another possible contender, off to a rocky start, had a investor, I guess, back out or not come through with the money in time. Ended up having to call their first two events off, which I believe were like back-to-back nights. And they also offered up to accept to release any fighters that wanted to be released immediately. So not a good sign.
No.
But, these kinds of things happen in the business world all the time. It's tough to get going, especially when you're not established at all. So hopefully they can get it going. We'll see in the future, I guess.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll pull for them. But in the meantime, the UFC is the big thing going on still, obviously, and probably will always be the big thing going on. But they did put on a great event this past weekend. Me and Chevy talked about it off air. UFC 314, probably our favorite card of the year so far. Not even close.
Yeah, we were very hyped about it leading into it, and it really came through. It was fantastic. Prelims all the way through the main event. And
Amanda Nunes announced in the Hall of Fame. We can just talk about that right off the get-go. She's well-deserving. Is Ronda Rousey the only other woman in the Hall of Fame right now?
Joanna is also. So she's the third woman in the UFC.
Yeah. So that makes sense. Joanna Jacek deserves it as well. Valentina can't be far behind at some point, too.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, yeah, shout out to Amanda. She did say she's coming back. We had to the camera while she was being inducted. She also had a cameo in the press conference. She's, I guarantee, praying for Kayla Harris to win because that's a fight that people want to see. That would bring her back. I don't know if people are as excited about the Pena. Obviously Amanda is the A side either way, but the Kayla Harrison fight would be exciting.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can make it a trilogy fight. Pena does have that one win, but man, Nunes was so dominant in that second fight. You can tell that's really the lesser of the two options. But
absolutely,
we'll see. MMA is, it doesn't always want to work with us. So
and she's been out for a couple of years, so
yeah,
ring rust. But
absolutely. All right, let's talk about this card before we get in the main card. Is there any prelim fights you want to shout out to?
Yeah, Jim Miller, Chase Hooper.
Oh yeah.
Chase Hooper really put on a clinic, tough fought decision win. His grappling was tenacious. His striking continues to improve. He just looks so much bigger and stronger and faster than Jim Miller, really. Jim Miller still looked good. He put up a tough fight, but decision win for the young guy.
I'll say two things, too, before we move on. Jim Miller, I thought he hung real tough. I know Chase, I like the fact that he was somewhat disappointed in his performance. Even though he didn't really have to be, he did great, but it shows you what kind of resolve and what kind of, effort he puts into this and why he's getting better and why he's going to be a star. Yeah. But I won't disagree. I respect the fact, too, he says, I want one of these young bucks next, too. But, man, I was thinking, man, if I was this guy's manager, I'd be like, where's Bobby Green at? I'm trying to keep working our way up with these guys that got names but not quite contenders yet, and then we'll go from there. We'll talk about get to this main card, but there's a lot of main card is the best example of rare times where certain people have they've had the right fights picked recently, and it's worked out for them. But let's continue on with these prelims for a little bit too.
Yeah. Also shout out the Dan Ige Sean Woodson fight. Woodson was doing really well, and Dan was coming back and hurt him, and then the fight got stopped. It was a bad stoppage from Andrew Glenn. Very bad stoppage, but it's a bummer for both guys. Ige was denied a spectacular finish, possibly, which could catapult him up. And
they got him bonus money too. You never know,
right? And Sean Woodson denied the opportunity to come back, and he really just had to survive that round, and he probably was going to win. So disappointing.
Yeah.
All right, let's get in the main card.
The main card. All right, let's talk about it.
Nikita Krylov versus Dominick Reyes.
All right, man. We were back and forth on this card a little bit last week, and you got this one. I wanted Reyes to win, but I just felt like, again, his fights, the Dustin Jacoby, the Anthony Smith, I felt like they were really picked well for him to kind of work his way back. And although he finished each of those opponents, there was a certain way he fought those fights. I thought he was a little gun shy after his knockouts. I didn't feel that as much here this time. I will say maybe there's still been a few moments, but man, he got like a crisp jab right at one point, right early on Krylov. I was like, whoa! I thought, and then he just ends up catching Krylov, knocks him out, TKO. I don't know if it's TKO or KO, but finished in the first round. Super impressive. It was the performance he needed. I think you might have been a little bit right too with Krylov being inactive. I'm sure that didn't help him. Krylov was also lunging and but whatever the case was, Dominick Reyes, this is what I'm just talking about here, like what I like to see with Chase, like he had the right fights to get him back into contention. I always like to do this, especially after a pay-per-view. For him, I'd like to see him fight Khalil Roundtree next. I like to see when Khalil comes back, I like to see them two have like a fight. And, maybe the winner of that will be able to slide into an opportunity for a light heavyweight championship. We got a new champion, but I think he is going to fight Alex Pereira again. But also, too, I like one other person, too, even though some people might think it's silly. Jan Blachowicz, who did stop him, and they already fought and knocked him out. You're on this comeback trail. Jan Blachowicz, even though he's coming off a loss, but he has a draw with the champion. You want to be the best in the world, let's run it back. If you're ever going to run it back, this would be the time to run back that fight. And let's see how Dominic does in that one. And what a story it would be, too, if he comes back and beats Jan. Then I remember it's like, he just got a title shot.
Yeah. So Hill and Roundtree are still matched up. They changed.
Oh, right.
I can't remember the new date.
That's
but if he wants to wait for that, I don't know how far down the line that is, but if he wants to wait and fight the winner of that, I'd be fine with that.
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm also interested in the Jan thing. Dom was saying it's not a comeback, he's reborn or whatever. It's but whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
He looked great. That step back counter. Then the commentary team was comparing it to the Conor and Aldo knockout, which it was very similar if you watch it back. Even the hammer fist finishes at the end, but it was beautiful. I do think, like you said, Krylov was lunging in there. Might have had a little bit to do with the ring rust. So. But Dom did what he needed to do. 3 straight finishes after a very, very rough streak in his career. So I'm excited to watch the guy fight. And I'm glad he's doing well. Very happy to see him doing well. All right, let's move on here.
Yes.
Yair Rodriguez versus Patricio Pitbull.
Yair, I mean, what a great performance, I thought Pitbull, maybe a victim of the UFC jinx. That debut, he looked a little frozen to me at different times. I thought towards the end, in the final round, it looked like he was stepping up a little bit to me. But overall, Yair's quickness really seemed to be the difference on this night. I wouldn't write Pitbull off yet. I think that, I'm interested to see some more fights with him in the UFC and how he is getting later in his career, though. So it will be interesting to see how this goes for him. But I like this performance by Yair. As far as next fights go, to me, you're going one of two directions. All right. Either he's fighting the new champ because there's not, a ton of top contenders that Alexander hasn't fought already, or Diego Lopes, who's coming off the loss, but they had that, confrontation at the press conference prior. It would have been a perfect world if Diego had won the title, but that's not what happened. But I still think that's a money fight you could do too.
Yeah, people really just couldn't deal with Yair's range. It felt like he is 37. But Yair is just arguably the toughest fighter to prepare for. He's like trying to prepare for Wonderboy. He's one of one. Very good at maintaining distance, and he's so good at that kicking range with his kicks. Very creative, very powerful, and he also fought very intelligently to keep that distance, even running away at some point. So great performance by him. Bummer for Pitbull. Pitbull did say he was not injured and he would like to fight at International Fight Week so he could get him on there. I don't know who he fights, but Yair, I'm with you. I want to see the Diego Lopes thing. They had that beef. Both guys are very exciting fighters, so that's a main event fight, I think, if you ask me. So,
did you pick Pitbull in this too?
No,
you didn't.
I picked Yair by decision.
Okay, I couldn't remember. Yeah. I was like, okay, because I know we had disagreed on a few of them, and I know the next one we disagreed on, but I think kind of opposite. Like, I was happy the one you got right. I think you're happy the one I got right. Yeah.
Yeah, let's get into it. Bryce Mitchell versus John Silva.
John Silva, I was very impressed by this performance. Not only, hey, I knew the striking would be there, but man, not only to avoid the takedowns from Bryce, but to win a lot of these scrambles and then to ultimately end up, I say submit him. He passed out, Mitchell ended up. Well, actually, he did tap out too, didn't he? He tapped out and then he
tapped and went out immediately.
Yeah. So, a great performance by Silva. Star-making performance in a lot of ways. But you know what? Here's the thing. He's in an interesting position too, right? Because he wasn't, this was the highest ranked fighter he's ever fought. And, I know he's already looking for a title shot. I think he'd like to get them momentum, and I get it. But I think he's going to have to fight another top contender, maybe 2 more top contenders. I don't know. Again, a lot of times I try to fight for these guys' careers, like Chase Hooper, Bobby Green. This might not be that case, but I have so much confidence in him, and I'd really like to see him against another wrestler. I'd like to see how he does. And I think Aljamain Sterling, is coming off a loss, but is ranked a few notches higher than him. That would be a fun fight, given Aljamain's weird kind of style, not just with the wrestling, but the striking, and Silva's kind of unique. It could be It could be a boring fight, it could be a fun fight, but I think it's a great match for Silva, and I'd like to see what he does with somebody like Sterling.
Yeah, so we got that ninja choke in round 2, but he was also really close to getting that guillotine in the first round. Bryce wiggled out of it, but this is what I wanted to happen, but obviously it's not what I thought was going to happen.
Right.
I thought Bryce's grappling would be much more of an issue, so Silva's a real problem for the division. He's super strong and explosive, everywhere, where we see it now. So, plus he's also a great character. He does that weird thing where he hangs on the cage and he's barking, and he did the thing where, obviously there's that great shot. I always think back to that Ali shot where he's standing over Foreman or Frazier.
I've been listening.
I'm not sure. One of those guys.
Yeah.
And then, now we just saw the picture. I'm sure you've seen it. Silva standing over the top of Bryce, who's unconscious, and he's barking in his face. So
yeah.
I think he's a future champ for sure. So
he's so young.
Yeah, he's a fun guy. Love the Fighting Nerds camp. They just can't be stopped right now.
No, they can't. Super impressive. Again, this was another really feel good moment on this card for me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and Bryce, he's not hurt. Whatever your feelings about him, he's gonna get back in there. He's still a talented fighter. Maybe not the best person. Maybe the most ignorant person in the UFC, but he is still a good fighter. So he's still around.
He's not getting cut or anything. This guy's still an elite fighter. And he doesn't give a shit what the rest of the world thinks. So it is what it
Clearly,
is.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, though, hey, Janzo, way to go.
All right, moving on. Co-main event here. Michael Chandler versus Paddy Pimblett. What a fight. Yeah.
So this is one we both picked Pimblett, but I don't think either one of us saw necessarily going like this. No, I thought for sure he was going to take some punishment, and other than a few maybe leg kicks, and I think he got taken down one point with a takedown. That was about it. And even when he got taken down, I thought Pimblett was doing better off his back.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, and I was super impressed. And the logic afterwards, too, when Paddy talked about how, Charles wasn't able, to submit him right away. And, he took some punishment. Says, so I thought, why not go for some ground and pound? And then, of course, he did that. He beat him up. And then he ended up, getting the submission. So I just think this was a star-making performance for Paddy, much like Silva. But Paddy's now basically, I feel like, at another level. There's so many potential fights for Paddy. I like the Dustin Poirier fight. And I love Dustin if Paddy loses, so be it. That's where he is. Dustin goes on top. That's great. If Paddy wins, well, then it's Dustin, putting over the next superstar on the way out. Justin Gaethje, that could be a fun fight. Charles Oliveira, I can't believe I'm saying this because I never would have thought I liked the matchup at all. Like Charles would just walk through him. But now I really like the style matchup, given the way that Paddy handled Chandler. So there's a lot of fun fights.
What about Ilya coming up to Ilya's coming up to lightweight? They have. I'm
glad you said that.
He threw the hand sanitizer at him, and they had.
Yes, I'm glad you said that because Luke Thomas had talked about years ago that don't want that fight for Paddy at that time.
Yeah,
and Ilya would have messed up, and I'm not so sure now either because Ilya and Islam, like these two are like but I think that is also a potential fight. I hope that Ilya either fights Makhachev for the title, and Paddy beats somebody, and then you do the fight. I think that, you run the risk of it, and it's like one of the biggest fights you could do. But
you're also knocking off one of your potential superstars, before they get to the title.
Yeah.
If you do that, so.
If it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen anyway. But I would take the chance because there's enough build here and fun fights, and there's rumors too that Islam Makhachev might be going up to welterweight possibly too.
I think if Bilal loses, Makhachev will go up. So
right, So we'll see what happens. There's a lot of stuff, and I think Max Holloway's next fight is probably going to be at lightweight too. So
I heard Max. It was going to be Dustin and Max. So
That's another. I've heard that too.
Yeah.
So I mean, you could also do Max and Paddy. So again, Paddy, congratulations, great performance, and there's no doubt that his next fight is going to be a big money fight. You know, it's going to be huge.
Yeah, he was so impressive. He's got I think he needs to fight a top 5 guy. Based off how impressive that was. Chandler could probably do 1 or 2 more fights, fun fights, and then he's probably done. Not the best run in the UFC, but all very exciting fights for sure. But tough.
It ain't gonna happen. But honestly, you could now more than ever. You could do the Conor fight. Like, who gives a shit? They're really, Right.
I bet Conor was watching that. I mean, I think he put money. He put money on Chandler. I bet, he was watching that. He's like, damn, I should have made it to the octagon. I could have won that. But
there's no doubt. There's no doubt. I'm not saying he would, but
I don't think he would either. I
think he's been out for so long.
15,
Yeah, I agree totally. But like, if you're looking at fights that are winnable for a guy like Conor, like, no offense to Michael Chandler, compared to those other top guys, like, he would probably be one of those guys,
And he's still a name that would draw that Conor could potentially get a win on, which is that the number of the people that he could possibly get a win over that are a draw, that number's dwindling every day. So,
man, imagine for fun, like Ireland or the UK, you had Conor versus Chandler. You don't even have a title fight, and then right there's the co-main event. It's Paddy and Poirier or Gaethje or something like that, and then Paddy and Conor won. I mean, Paddy would, if he's able to beat Justin.
That'd be the next one for sure.
But that'd be the money fight there, And then you have like another fucking draw, and it's not even the champ. So
that would be ideal, really, because
it would be. Yeah, I don't know if we'll get that, but
Conor probably likes his chances against Paddy too, as long as he doesn't get taken to the ground. But
right, good luck.
That's a long ways away. None of that's going to happen.
No.
Happen in the octagon again, but
back
to this fight. Yeah, so Paddy also. He looked huge. He looked so much bigger than Chandler. Like, we know Chandler's not the tallest, but he's super jacked. But Paddy also looked really big. Like, he looked so much bigger than Chandler. So that's another point in his column. If he does fight Ilya, Ilya, I don't think Paddy would be able to make 145 at this point. Ilya's struggling, but I don't think Paddy could physically do it at this point anymore. So. He was huge, but shout out to Paddy. I think that was an eye-opening performance to what everyone was talking about his potential when he came into the UFC. And then, the way that he fought and the wins he got, the performances he had, that hype kind of died down a little bit. And maybe, and I'm guilty of this too, not thinking that he was ever going to get to a title and thinking, maybe he's a top 10 guy, maybe not. He just dominated former champ. I mean, not UFC champ, but Bellator champ. I think Chandler is in his late 30s now, but he's still in phenomenal shape. So, very impressive win. But let's move on. Main event here, featherweight champion Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes.
I don't usually get into like all this stuff like on a podcast, but adversity is a privilege, right? That's what Volk said afterwards. And I just thought, man, like, if there ever was a mentally tough guy in this sport, a guy who, was one of the most dominant featherweight champions. I love they actually had a little thing earlier in the prelims too, where they talked about the featherweight goats and they broke down Aldo and Holloway.
That was great. Yeah, it was great. Anik, yeah.
Yeah, that was great. It was a great little video package they did with it and everything too. And, it was what it was. He fought a close fight, stepping up to lightweight with Islam Makhachev. Some people thought he won. And then when Islam's next opponent, I don't remember, fell through, he took it on short notice, and he got knocked out. But then he fought another fight defending his featherweight title against Ilya on short turnaround again. And he got knocked out by a guy we just saw knock out Max Holloway. That no one's done that, So, but I just felt like, unfortunately, even though there were circumstances involving those last 2 losses to 2 of the all-time greats, really, and maybe that's a bit, but they're really good. They're the best currently, and I just thought, man, the momentum, it's too much. It's not going in his favor right now. And then Diego Lopes, he's just finishing guys. But we talked about it last week, and you saw through it. You said, and I even said, too, if he can get in the later rounds. But that wasn't really the case. He just fought a better fight. And if anything, Diego, I thought, looked better in that last round and came on strong, which was also great because it's like you want to see that potential in somebody like Diego. And, I feel like both these guys kind of came out like winners in a lot of way here, about as close as you could. But hats off to Volk. Great performance. I will only say this. I was, because I'm trying to pick potential opponents, and I realized that we kind of almost get back into this similar role because now that Ilya's left, it's like he's pretty much beaten almost everybody. And, there's a couple guys coming up, Lerone Murphy, Mosvar, those are two guys you can always.
That's who he called out. Also, I think he said he wanted that Mosvar. So
that's a good fight. And I would say, even though it's happened, Yair, given his impressive performance, another big win. I think give him Mosvar, have that be a different fight, and I say book Yair and Diego, and especially as close as Diego fight was anyway. The winner of that should meet the winner of Volk, and at that point, if Volk keeps winning, maybe he does go back to lightweight before his career ends because the guy deserves it.
Yeah, it was a very impressive performance. Diego really just had no answer for Volkanovski's jab. Really, no head movement, no counters. The commentary team was talking about how he needed to kind of just throw caution to the wind and just go for it. I don't think that's a sustainable way to hold a title necessarily, but it is how he got to the shot. So, and that's kind of what he did in the 5th round, but I think he needed to pull out that aggressiveness a little bit earlier in the fight and kind of risk, taking one to give one. But
I don't know if it would have worked out well for him, but I don't think he had a lot of options.
Right. He was losing the fight with his current game plan. He wasn't really adjusting anything. So, when he did land, he did hurt Volkanovski, not knock down hurt him, but he cut him bad. And, he had that, Volkanovski did have that eye poke, which he also poked Diego. So they had a couple issues, but Volkanovski couldn't see out of one eye and the other eye was all swollen. So.
Which just made that win even sweeter, by the way.
Right.
This guy, all his adversity.
Yeah, he's, it's funny because Max, we talked about it before. Max is my favorite fighter, and no one's derailed Max's legacy more than Volkanovski, and yet I still love the guy. He's just a likable guy. I saw someone post a thing that's like famous YouTube chef wins UFC belt because, that's what he's doing in his off time. He's out there on his farm and doing all this YouTube chefing. So he's just a very charismatic guy, likable guy. So glad to see him win. And Lopes will be back. I'm a fan of him too. Put on a good performance. Very close fight. You could see he was very disappointed with the decision, but I think it was the right decision.
Yeah, I think he knew down too. I think that he was doing the thing that all great competitors do in the UFC. Like, man, we got to win this title. I just want to say one other thing too. We talked about it, and I know it's been mentioned on other places too, but that like we don't have a ton of stars right now in the UFC. It feels like great, fighters, but didn't know that star factor. I felt like this event helped make some potential stars out of some people, like Paddy for sure.
Yeah.
But I think John Silva is definitely potentially a star. And then I think also, a guy like Volk is a star to a certain level, and Diego Lopes, even in defeat, he might end up being there one day too. So,
yeah, this card. So this card is basically when I started watching UFC. This is what we got every pay-per-view was this level of card. And it's kind of diminished since then, since COVID and the Apex and having 500 fighters on the roster and all that. But I mean, this brought back joy to UFC for me. I haven't been as locked into a card. Sometimes I'm on my phone or I'm doing other things while the card's on and I'm watching, but I was totally locked in, start to finish on this one for sure. So I appreciate it. Dana and Hunter, keep these cards coming, please.
Please, yeah. All right. Why don't we tell people we got coming up one more time?
All right, April 26th, UFC Fight Night. Machado Gary versus Prates, 9 p.m. Kansas City. And then May 3rd, UFC Fight Night. Sandhagen versus Figueiredo, 10 p.m. Iowa. I'm excited for that one. That's good matchmaking. And then May 10th, UFC 315 Muhammad versus Della Maddalena, 10 p.m. Montreal.
All right, some good fights coming up. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in to the Combatcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you can. Hope you enjoyed UFC 314.